What's up everybody, Reese and Ella here from R&G Reptiles. We hope you've had a fantastic week, and if you're new to the channel then welcome. If not, then welcome back. In today's video we're going to be doing the first video of a two-part series, and we're going to be talking about cost expectations that you might have when buying your first snake. Alright, so diving straight into it. When you buy your first snake, and a particular emphasis on this video is going to be towards a pet reptile keeper rather than a person who's well established in the reptile industry and already has several animals or may already be breeding. The broad categories that I would split the costs into are going to be housing, heating, with thermostat as a kind of important subcategory, decor and substrate. So when it comes to housing, most kind of commercialized pet stores will have a selection of starter kit tanks or enclosures that you can opt into buying. An example of something like that you would be interested in is going to be something like this. This is what I currently use as a travel tank for some of our smaller snakes, and something like this is only going to set you back like £10, so it's like $12 for anyone in the States. These come in a variety of sizes. The one that I just showed you is the smallest, but you do get kind of incrementally larger sizes of the same type of enclosure at a really reasonable price, to be honest. So something like that would be £10. The largest kind of travel Viv or starter tank at my local store anyway, I think is about £30, so really not too expensive at all. You will need to increment those enclosures for your snake as they grow, because if you try and throw a really small or young snake into a 3 or 4 foot vivarium like those behind me, they're not going to do that well, predominantly because they're really small animals, and in the wild they are the prey, they are the animals at the bottom of the food chain. So if they're in a space which is simply too big or too open, they're gonna get stressed, they're not gonna eat, they're not gonna thrive. And for that reason, that's why you have to increment the enclosures as they grow. So particularly for things like cone snakes and royal pythons, you're better off going for a smaller enclosure and incrementing the size up as they grow. And then eventually, after maybe a year or 2 years, then you can give them that step up into a larger enclosure where you can put more enrichment, more interesting decoration, and take it from there. The second step, or second category of cost, which I want to talk about, is heating. So heating is a bit of a beast to kind of wrap your head around, because you can pay anything from £50 all in, so that's your heat mat and thermostat, for a small setup like we currently have for our smallest hatchlings, and you can take that all the way up to literally the hundreds of pounds. So when you're looking at vivariums, big setups like the ones behind me, heat mats are not what I would recommend because they're kind of older technology and frankly less effective. But a mid-level thermostat's going to be costing you 70-75 quid, and then a ceramic heat bulb with appropriate fittings and then a guard is going to set you back probably another 60 quid. So and that's for kind of mid-level stuff as well, so that's not as expensive as you can go. You can when it comes to thermostats especially, you can look to pay hundreds and hundreds of pounds just for the thermostat. Of course, like I said, for a starter setup, when you get your first snake, it's just a hatchling. You're better off going for your under tank heating, which comes in the form of a heat mat. They're typically 15 to 30 quid, depending on the size and power of the heat mat that you buy. And just a cheap thermostat will suffice. But I think it's really important at this point to just stress the importance of the thermostat that you buy. A thermostat which is cheaper may be more prone to have manufacturing faults, or maybe more prone to defects and malfunction. And this is something which, if it goes wrong, I mean, it's driving a heat mat. This is something that can literally set fires if it goes wrong. So not only can it kill your animal if things go bad, but it can damage the rest of the surroundings, whether that's your house, a shed, whatever. So it can be really disastrous, and it's really important to actually get equipment that is suitable for you and your environment. So the third category of costs to discuss are going to be the decor. Now, you can really go all out on your decor if you want. A small enclosure, like the one I showed just a little earlier, it's really small. It doesn't have a great deal of space to fit a lot in. So in this setup, when we buy new hatchlings, or hopefully when we come to breed new hatchlings, we're going to be putting in a water bowl and a hide, and that's all that there's going to be room for in this small enclosure. And honestly, a water bowl you can get for a couple of quid, and a hide you can get for a couple of quid, so you really don't have to go all out. But as you can see from the tanks behind me, I mean, in this one here we've got Groot in the corner there, we've got a Groot in the corner over here, we've got an assortment of different hides, we've got water bowls, plants, so you can really make it what you want it to be. You can go all out if you want, but you don't have to, and that's the key. You don't have to have the most incredible enclosure, you don't have to spend tons and tons of money. For literally just a few quid, you can get something which is satisfactory. And you know, when a snake is a baby and a hatchling, they're not going to require the same level of enrichment as an adult. And I say require very loosely, because snakes are such easygoing and easy to care for animals. So you don't have to break the bank, is the point I'm making. Moving on to substrate, my recommendation for substrate is to actually get to know your animal and take it from there. And I know that's very vague, but the substrate options that I typically go for is one of either paper, lignocell or aspen, and then a coconut husk. So of those options, coconut husk is the one that I would opt for an animal which requires any kind of degree of humidity above whatever I keep in my living room. So my living room humidity typically stands at about 30%. Of course, for royal pythons, that's simply nowhere near sufficient. I typically keep them somewhere near 60%. And coconut husk substrate is just perfect for that. And really that applies to all ages. When it comes to my corn snakes, or our corn snakes, that's where we really vary it up a bit. So for our smallest corn snakes, and particularly for corn snakes which we are worried about, say recently we've had Timo to the vet, we will keep those on paper, and that's because we don't want to risk any kind of impaction in their intestinal tract. So if they swallow too much substrate, that could make them ill, basically. So by keeping them on paper, we avoid that, and when they're really, really small, that is a particular risk, because aspen or lignocell is typically very, very fine, and we just don't want too much of that to be consumed in the process of eating a pinky. As the snake kind of grows into juvenile and subadult, and is not strictly a hatchling, that's when we'll look to move them onto aspen or lignocell. And for corn snakes in particular, they love to burrow. So, I mean, I noticed the difference straight away as soon as I started using Aspen and Lignocell for our collection, I mean, the corn snakes, they just go wild for it. They love to burrow and rearrange the tanks. And in fact, I'll take this opportunity to actually give you a bit of a peek inside some of our corn snake tanks so that you can see what they do. So this is the inside of Tristana's enclosure, and when this enclosure was first set up, all of the Lignocell that's in here was set perfectly flat. But you can see the holes in the side where she's started to burrow. You can see holes underneath the water bowl where she likes to hide in there. And she really just likes to have a proper good rummage and a bit of an explore. So none of this is actually level anymore. It's all disturbed from where she's enjoyed kind of burrowing around and just having a little hide and a bit of play. So when it comes to the cost of substrate, you can get a small bag of substrate which will do you a few different tank changes for one of these small kits for about £7 or £8 at your local pet store. As you kind of grow to have a bigger collection, there are options to kind of bulk purchase and to purchase from non-high street retailers to save a bit of money kind of per changeover that you do for your tanks. But as a starter for 10, you're going to be looking £5 to £10 for a bag of substrate. So to kind of summarise everything I've been through, when you buy your first snake, you're going to want a small tank, heat source, thermostat, decor and substrate. So those 5 things. Your tank's going to be about £15. For decor, you can easily do with less than a tenner for your first snake, and you can of course, as your snake grows into bigger and bigger enclosures, you can spend a little bit more as you wish. For your heat mat and thermostat, you're going to be looking at about £50, and then your substrate, you're looking, let's say £7.50 as a kind of middle ground. So kind of £15 tank, £10 for decor, £50 for heat mat and thermostat, and then £8 for substrate. You're going to be looking at about £80 to £85, broadly speaking, not including the cost of your animal. And then I suppose the last thing to really think about is going to be the food source. So a young snake, realistically, whether or not it's a corn snake or a royal python, you're going to be starting them on mice of just varying sizes. A bag of pinkies, you can probably buy 20 pinkies for a few quid, and it is that cheap. You want to feed them roughly once every 5 to 7 days when they're very young. So you're looking at a cost of pennies per week. Honestly, it's really, really cheap. But of course, as you get bigger, larger food prey sizes cost a little bit more. But then again, you're also feeding them slightly less frequently as they grow. So Simon, who's just over my shoulder here, I feed him about once every 2 weeks. So for anyone that's watching this video that might be kind of thinking about the kind of more medium to long term and the cost implications of actually keeping an animal, if you buy like a new hatchling corn snake, you're probably going to want to move them up to what I would consider a medium sized tank, so the one up from this at around the 6 to 9 month mark, and then probably an enclosure this size once they're a couple of years old, and maybe this size once they're like 5+ years old. Now the cost of just buying the next size up hatchling kit, again, you're going to be looking at 20-30 quid, so it's not a massive investment for the pleasure of keeping such amazing animals, at least in my opinion. Now having started to keep snakes, I would never go back, and I love them to bits. So I know that this week's video has been a little bit drier than normal. Kind of wanted to throw out a few figures and a few estimates for you guys, anyone that might be interested anyway. So I thought I'd just add a little bit of bonus footage of our ZC at the end here. and yeah, obviously we hope to be breeding snakes in the future, so if you are interested in acquiring a new animal, then please make sure you hit us up. Alrighty, that's it for this week's video. Hopefully you've got a bit more information and insight into kind of making a decision on if you want to buy a snake or get into the reptile breeding hobby. Thanks again for watching, and if you have any comments or feedback, please don't hesitate to just leave them down below in the comments. If you liked today's video, make sure you tune back in next week. We try and put a video out every single Sunday. And please also share our channel, share our videos with anybody else that you think might be interested in following us on our journey. And please make sure that you like and share this video with anybody else that you think might be interested in joining us on our journey. As I said earlier, next week's video is going to be on kind of cost and cost expectations that you might have if you were going to set up as a breeder, kind of similar to the journey that we're on. So please do tune back in next week, and we'll see you next time. Bye!